thank you guys for being here. It's really it's a special privilege after 2 years, and obviously having to take a break from in-person gaming, organized gaming. It's great to be together again. So thanks for being here. Thought we'd try something a little different this time around. As you can see, we're going to do for tonight. We're doing a designer roundtable.
We are asking for blindfolds if you make us stand up.
Nobody stands up. Nobody stands up. So designer roundtable, I want you to meet some of the designers we have that we're privileged to work with. They're going to talk about what they've done and what they're working on now. And you can stump them with your rules questions about any games they've designed, right? You could go ahead and try to stump the designer. And then just so you know, for tomorrow night, we start earlier in this area at 5:30 because we'll serve pizza in that area right where we left, and then we'll be in here, and Bill will do his like town hall compass update session tomorrow. But we'll start at 5:30
union address
because we're providing dinner. We're going to provide pizzas. If you can eat pizza, we'll have pizza. Hopefully, we'll have different options for you. But let's go ahead. So thanks for being here. Let's go ahead. I'm just going to go through and introduce you so you all know who's here. So as I introduce you, maybe tell them a little bit about what designs you've done, and we'll talk about future designs in a moment. So maybe just things you've done, or maybe if it's your first, what you're working on now. So let's start here with, and where you're from. Kevin McPartland, where are you joining us from?
Hi, I'm joining you from Jessup, Maryland, Central Maryland.
Great.
And yeah, well, this is, oh, yeah, that's almost done. And I've also, but this is my first game for Compass Games.
And what's it called?
Maori.
Yeah.
And it's Warriors of the Long White Cloud. And it's so this is the only copy in existence right now. The rest are
That's right.
So if you want,
just track him, just follow him.
And God, stop doing that East Front stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Well, actually, I did another Polynesian game for GMT Games. I did Conquest of Paradise.
Conquest of Paradise.
And then along the same vein, for Amateur Star Arms games, I did. I'm sorry for Clash of Arms games, I did Amateur Star Arms.
Amateur Star Arms,
which is a simulation of the War of 1812.
Perfect. Well, thanks.
Completely different.
Thanks for being here. We're going to come back to you, Kevin, to talk about your future work as well. Next, we have Gregory M. Smith. Where are you joining us? Where'd you come from?
I'm Greg Smith. I'm coming from Ephrata, Pennsylvania, which is near Lancaster, eastern Pennsylvania. I've done a lot of submarine games, The Hunters, The Hunted, Silent Victory, Beneath the Med for GMT. Most of my work nowadays is for Compass, however, because I'm very happy here. And currently I'm about to release a two-player game, which is kind of a shocker for me because most people know I focus on solitaire designs. And one thing I would mention, if we're going to talk later, come back to me.
Come back on future.
I like to work on talk about the human dimension in wargaming, because I think that's kind of underrepresented a lot of ways, because there's definitely in combat, there's definitely a human dimension to what goes down. And of course, it's a little more applicable to my designs because tend to be a little more tactical and single weapon systems or single airplane, single sub, what have you. But I think human dimension is something that's worth talking about, and it's just something I have a personal interest in when I design.
So we'll talk about it when we come back to the round. So next we have Adam Starkweather, who I believe has recently relocated. So you're going to have to fill us in on where you're at now and stuff you've done, published.
So yeah, I recently moved last summer to Fenton, Missouri from Long Island. And let's see, I've been doing this for a while, like 20 years. I started as an in-house designer for M&P. My first game was a game called Fire in the Sky, and then I made a game called Victory Lost. Red Star Rising, Devil's Cauldron, Where Eagles Dare, The Greatest Day, Most Dangerous Time, all those games from M&P. And then moved to Compass about almost 6 years ago now. And run two series. One is CSS, which is similar to an old series that I made called GTS, company level, very gritty. And then a couple of years ago introduced OSS, which is a higher level operational scale system. So it's of a higher level, things like Korea, Vietnam, and my latest was Doomsday. Just handed in Doomsday Balkans, which I added 4 more maps. And then I got 5 more maps coming for the Norway game. So it gives you a nice 12 map game for your aircraft hangar friends to play in. They can all be played singly as well.
Yep.
And I guess I'll go on to what I'm doing.
Yep, that's what we're going to do next. But first, we're going to introduce to you Randy Heller. Randy, tell us where you're joining us from and what some of your past work includes.
Well, I'm currently from Barrington, New Hampshire, seacoast, New Hampshire, about an hour northeast of Boston. Originally from the San Francisco Bay Area, retired to New Hampshire after a 26-year Navy career. For Compass Games, I designed Operation Scorpion, Rommel's First Strike, and Bitter Woods, which is in its 5th edition, the designer edition that's currently marketed by Compass Games. Thank you. And right now I see myself as a freelance developer designer. My recent work, I developed a battalion level A Time for Trumpets for GMT, Bruno Senegalio's big bulge game. And I'm currently working with Dana Lombardi of Lombardi Studios, and I'm available.
There we go. Love that. We're going to be doing the dating part is coming. Charles can help us with that part.
Designer dating.
Right. So let's got 2 more to go. So we got Mike Wilner, where you're joining us from, and
straight from Brooklyn, New York. Longtime player, first-time designer. So I'm designing a game called Prelude to Revolution. It's based on the Compass release. Compass released Prelude to Rebellion, I don't know, a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Really good system, quite innovative, really incredible, very card-driven, unique stuff, but it was on a topic which very few people are aware of. Please raise your hand if you know anything about the rebellion in Lower Canada in 1837 or 1838.
1836?
There's one.
I know about 1836. We can talk later.
Okay. Okay, so we have like 2 maybe. So that was one of the.
That's pretty impressive.
That's 2
not bad,
yeah.
right?
But the system is awesome, and we determined that it's a very, very strong engine, and we put the Russian the run up to the Prelude to the Russian Revolution, which starting roughly 1905. Concluding as late as October 1917, and onto the same engine, added some stuff that's specific, and we're kind of done. And then we'll talk about what's next.
That's right. That's what we'll do. So, and lastly, it's a pleasure to have Steve Overton here. Steve, where are you joining us from tonight?
Well, I'm
And tell us
from
about your games.
Odessa, Texas, and I bought my first war game in 1972. Started designing scenarios right away because that was fun. Went in the military, came back, got with GDW and was doing some games with them. Got with West End Games and was doing the expansion for Fire Team, and then all at once Board War Games were gone. So I went to the computer world and I did a bunch of scenarios, and then started a design group for Combat Mission. We had the first site that I know of that had more than 10,000 members for wargamers way back then. But then one of my friends said, hey, Board War Games are back, and I still had the Fire Team that I was still working on that's been sitting there for 20-something years, and you just never leave it alone. And so here we are, and Red Eclipse is on the pre-order schedule.
Great, perfect. We're going to open it up to audience questions pretty soon here, so start thinking about, you've met all the designers. We're going to help you with questions, we'll talk about their upcoming projects, but first we have our first lightning round. You guys have to answer very quickly.
Okay.
All right, not messing around.
All right, ready.
You gotta give me your favorite war game right now. Favorite game.
Favorite,
Go.
one that I
Favorite game.
designed?
No, favorite game, period.
Oh,
favorite game, your favorite game.
Actually, I play with my wife all the time, Wingspan.
By?
Oh, I don't
Published
know.
by?
Stonemeyer.
It's your favorite game. You can't know the publisher. There we go.
Stonemeyer.
Okay, that's it. Now,
Yeah.
see how it's unfair? I picked on you because everybody's prepared.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, we thought you changed
So
the
you
weather.
set the bar, right?
thought you
And
changed the
everybody's like, oh, I didn't have to go
There's
first.
another new kid down
I
there.
didn't have to
that
go
you can pick
first.
as well.
I know, I'm
Okay.
gonna switch it up. So you're now
Throw
done,
me
you
under
picked
the
on.
bus.
So Greg, your favorite war game?
Simple, ogre, complicated. Terraforming Mars.
Terraforming Mars is your
Yeah.
favorite game. All right, Adam, your favorite game?
Next War by SPI.
Next War by SPI.
I can still play it. I did put it down for 20 years.
You're
I don't
still
have to read
playing
the
it?
rules. I
Actively
can read.
playing
I don't have to read the rules anymore. I haven't played it 20 years. I picked
Holy
it up
crap, okay.
a couple months ago, and I still knew the rules.
And Learn and Play series that we had, so we owned the rights. Randy, your favorite war game?
Africa Corps, developed by the indefatigable Tom Shaw.
That's your favorite game? Your
It is.
favorite game? Fond memories too. Mike, your favorite war game?
Of course, it's Streets of Stalingrad 3rd Edition.
Oh, the big, you're going big.
man.
You're going big
Go
like
big or
Next
go
War.
home, man.
Which one's
Go big
bigger,
or go
Next War or Streets of Stalingrad? Which is bigger?
Oh, Next War.
Yeah, next
Is
was a
Next War
larger
bigger?
map.
Okay.
Oh, you knew I had to pick a monster game.
Steve, your favorite
So,
war game?
Outer Rim
I don't know Outer Rim.
it's a Star Wars.
Oh, cool.
My
recent game.
grandkids will
I
play
have
that, so that's my favorite.
All right, does anybody have any matches here? Dating service. Did anybody match a favorite game? Africa Core, do we have a match?
It's not, I don't know if it's my favorite, but it's one of my top.
Okay, so you guys can start platonically?
Yeah,
There?
there you go.
Okay,
My
yes.
wife's favorite game is Wingspan.
Wingspan?
There we go.
There we
I'll tell you
go.
what
The
your
guy had
hands
under
are
pressure has connected. There we go.
Oh, the wife. You get the wife.
Streets of Stalingrad,
He
Eastern
lives in
Front.
New York, so we
Ah.
got something.
Nobody else, not even close. No other, not even in. Okay, not so good, not so good. Kevin, you did great. I picked on you, and you got the closest connection there.
Yeah.
There you go.
We-
All right, so how about I ask them now what they're working on? Is that fair? Is that okay? So we're gonna start on this side now, this time. So Steve, you sort of mentioned it already,
Red
but maybe
Eclipse.
you get to give a little more detail about the Red Eclipse series. But
Okay.
again, we've only got,
Yeah, I know.
maybe
Yeah, I
because
know.
you've got a million titles
I know.
coming, so
I
we're
know.
gonna have to keep it around 2 minutes max.
Yeah.
2 minutes max.
Contact Now series, and there's, like he said, there's 10 games in the series. So first one, Russians and Americans, 1989, then Vietnam, then more and more and more and more. That's it.
That's really
Way
short.
too
That's okay. That's good. All right.
more and more, like he said.
What are you thinking of doing? What do you
Okay,
got? You got Prelude to Revolution you've started talking about, but
Right.
maybe if there's anything
Yeah, so
beyond that
we-
you want to mention to
We're
everybody?
very happy with the underlying structure of the system and realized that it could be a series game. Because Prelude to Revolution really extended well. Straight out of Prelude to Rebellion, it added stuff, but it also dropped stuff. So it didn't just like more Chrome, same game, more Chrome. It's a different game, but same underlying system. And it models that, it models the period well and models the situations well. So we thought about what other protracted revolutionary events would be good.
Oh, you're teasing me. Ow.
And we thought
Teasing me.
maybe the French Revolution, maybe the American Revolution.
Oh,
So
there we
I
go.
wonder,
All right.
how many French revolutions do we have in the room? Just curious. One,
Yeah, some
two,
knowledge, okay.
three. How many American revolutions do we have? Okay.
About the same group?
Yeah, so
Same virus?
we come to a conclusion that this is going to be a worthwhile to make into a series game. And we're just about concluded with Prelude to Revolution. It's done. If anyone wants to play it with my crew,
We're just gonna start the artwork.
yeah, now it's just art and proofing and publish.
And it's here. The game is here.
Yeah, if
to
you
be
want to give it a
played.
try,
Play test it, right?
flip a few cards. But we're going to start working on the American Revolution. We go chronologically. Do American Revolution first and then French Revolution.
All right. Now, Randy, you did mention you're a free agent, so thanks for mentioning that. But if you have like a wish list or what you see coming up, I know you're going to be working on something. Actually, you can mention it. So just in general, projects you're looking at for the future.
Well, this will surprise a number of you. I have contracted as a developer for a new edition of Streets of Stalingrad. And it's going to be different.
Different
and
scale,
it's
though,
a
right?
regimental
Regimental level.
level rather than
A
battalion.
little different.
Yeah, there you
But
go.
hopefully that will still scratch the same
Maybe
itch.
you can call it the Avenues of Stone.
There we go.
Boulevards are wider.
That's exciting news because we had right for streets.
Go SWAT level.
Adam, maybe give a good round out of your series.
Well, let's say right now I'm working on, I guess, 4 games.
Okay.
That'll be next in the bunch. One is the Norway expansion to the Doomsday Project.
How many maps?
That'll be 8 maps.
8 maps. Okay.
But they don't
small.
connect, so
8 maps.
they're 5 maps, then
There we
3
go.
maps. And I'm also working on, if we have some old hands here, there was an old game called Road to Washington in Sharpsburg, made by Command Perspectives by a guy named Jim Murphy. Forgive me, I have a cold, so a little
Oh, no
scratchy.
problem. No, here.
He was killed by a drunk driver, but he put out 3 games, these 2 plus Beat to Quarters, which were really great games. And I think that had he not been killed, he would have been a big gun in our hobby. So I'm making a Gettysburg game with his War of Rebellion system as its heart, as sort of an homage.
Oh, that's awesome.
I'm also making a combat game that is scenario-based rather than comprehensive. So it's going to be in Arnhem, so you'll play soldiers that fought in Arnhem. It's just an area I know pretty well from previous games. And let's see, I'm also working on Enemy at the Gates, which is the next CSS game on Berlin, which has perhaps the most stunning map I've ever seen. And a guy named Greg has worked with me on the OB, to have one of the most accurate OBs. So if you've ever wanted to be a communist player trying to hunt down undesirables in Berlin, that'll be a big part of that game, because that was one of their major victory things they wanted to do. But I'm also doing a substantial revision for those that play CSS of the indirect fire rules. So I'm going to differentiate between mortars and artillery, of types of shells and fire missions and things like that. Down the road, I'm working on a CSS game on Anzio. I'll also take that gorgeous 1985 Berlin map, give it a little faded tint, put a 1945 picture on it. We'll play 1945 Berlin with the Russians coming in. And let's see.
You mentioned Test of Faith, because that's sort of done.
Oh, Test of Faith, that's done and coming out. I hadn't mentioned that.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, if you have interest in it, Test of Faith was it's on the Arab-Israeli War in 1973. It was a fascinating design experience, unlike any I've ever had before. And I hate to take up so much time, but it's a game, or a topic rather, when you design it, that you deal with metagaming problems like I've never dealt with before. I mean, how do you get the Israelis to attack on the 8th against the Saggers when as a player you know not to do that? How do you get the Israelis to bomb the bridges when you know that half of them are fake? You know, or how do you get the Arabs to attack on the 12th? How do you get a scene between the two armies that happens to be right where the Israeli bridging equipment is? How do you deal with these metagame issues? And it was a wonderful design and a serious challenge to get all of these resolved, and I'm pretty proud of how we did it and got it done. So Test of Faith is my next game coming out,
Great.
which uses the OSS system.
Okay.
So anyway,
All right. Greg, take it away. Current projects. Mention definitely the one you're playing right now.
Oh,
We've
well.
got several you're playing right now, but
Yeah, all right, so glad you're all seated. So
Yeah,
when I
this could
announced
be
that,
one.
in fact, my next release is a 2-player game. It's called Imperial Tide. It's the card-driven. Some people have called it Paths of Glory Light. Okay, fine. The objective really, I love Paths of Glory, but it just drags on so long sometimes. And the objective was to make this doable in 3 hours. So I think I achieved that objective, and it's actually halfway fun. I actually have had a lot of fun playing it, which
you
I
played it
don't
with
normally-
Billy. You played it with Billy and a few others already. I think one or
Billy
two
played a
others.
game.
With
Billy,
Dan.
Yeah.
raise your hand there. He played a game.
Well, there was he put down the gauntlet at a town hall session.
And I don't have to
Challenge
live in
Greg.
shame for the rest of my life. I
But
did
Greg
in
won,
fact
I
beat
heard.
Billy. But anyway,
Greg won.
so it is a 2-player game, all of World War I in an evening. And it's fun, tons of decisions. I have to mention Western Front Ace, and those of you from the South or Texas, all I can say about the artist is bless his heart. I love this guy, but he's driving me nuts. He's just he's overachieving, and he's making it so gorgeous, which is good for you all. But it has this project.
He's
I mean,
on the one
game's-
counter per week plan. Sort of
Yeah,
like
the game's been done.
magazine.
The game
Oh, my
design's
God.
been done for 2 to 3 years, whatever, and it's just a question of waiting for the 3 artists I have on the project to finish up. We're real close. I just
So
got to
you-
proof the counters, proof the rule book,
Tell them how big it is.
and
though.
we're
It's
about
a
there.
big-
Well, there's
big
like
project.
most people I think probably have an interest in it. Know it's 60 aircraft flyable. It's the second half of the war, but you can be British, French, British naval, Austro-Hungarian, German, Italian, American, whoever else, Belgians. So there's a lot of. It probably could have been 3 different games, to be honest. Could have probably released 3 different games, but instead it's just decided to make this kind of my magnum opus as a solitaire air warfare game. And playtesters really have had fun with it, so I'm not concerned about it like I was concerned about Imperial Tide, because you always have a little anxiety: are people going to actually have fun? Because that's the whole point, right? So I'm not anxious because it is fun. So, and it's coming. But a lot of people are really. I just hope it lives up to the hype, because it's just been so long in development. But really, it's just literally been an art issue. And you can't speed these guys up. God bless them, just let them do. And you don't want to piss your artists off. So, it's going to be gorgeous at a minimum. I think it's fun. The testers have all been positive. So Western Front Ace, World War I air combat, single, and it's solitaire. Been working on Soviet Tank Ace as a follow-on to American Tank Ace. If you ever wanted to drive a T-34 through village kind of thing, then that's for you. I'm probably not as excited about that as the project I'm working on now that I'm most excited about is Atlantic Sentinels. And the reason why is my very first war game was the Hunters. A lot of people have heard about that, where you command a U-boat. And people have been bugging me literally for years and years and years. Hey, we want to be the destroyer. We want to sink the U-boats. So I was like, and I just couldn't wrap my head around it. And then I finally broke the code one day and realized I have to kind of break my mold and do it a little differently, and I could do it. So Atlantic Sentinels, you're the destroyer escort group commander, and you've got 6 to 7 destroyers and frigates and corvettes working for you, and you're protecting the convoy. But the cool thing about this is, the reason I'm so jazzed up about it, was it seamlessly integrates with the Hunters rules. So those combat routines from the Hunters, that's how your ships get, and unlike the Hunters, you try to rack up the most tonnage. In this game, you try to rack up the least tonnage lost, because you're the protector, right? So you have the seamless integration of the combat, and you can actually, there's rules where your buddy can play his U-boat from the Hunters, and there's the sonar, finding
There's the sonar ping. There's the ping.
yeah, there's the ping, and you can actually sink your buddy or stop him from attacking your convoy, seamlessly, rules-wise. And so I'm jazzed up about it. That I got a couple testers and they're really digging it. So that's always, whether I think it's really cool sometimes is immaterial, because it's if the testers think it's fun, that's always a really good sign. So I'm really jazzed up on this design. It's called Atlantic Sentinels. And that's the design's getting pretty close to done. But I have a few other games in the works. Sensuokan is my Japanese submarine game, and probably a couple others. But that's enough to chat about.
All right, great. Thanks, Ray. Thanks for the update. Kevin, what
Well,
about?
unlike these guys, I'm not retired. So, I just
There
got
you
one
go.
game. In
He has the curse of the day
That's
chart.
Yeah. And so John said I could do this,
Yes.
but I've got one game that's under contract with Compass that has not been announced yet. And it's called The Great Hunger. This is my playtest. Great Hunger, a game of the Irish potato famine. And it's not like all the other games about this subject.
That we all have. We all have.
Because you
We
got
all
free
play.
spot.
We're playing right now.
Free spot.
So right there,
So
first
when
one in the collect.
But when the potatoes was first introduced to Ireland, it was a great boon. And so each player plays different groups of people, poor people just struggling, which was most of the Irish population at the time. And the idea is the potato comes along, it really grows, everything goes great, and then the blight comes out. And oh boy. And so the winner is the person who has the most people either still in Ireland or successfully immigrated to America.
So it sounds like beer and pretzels.
So yeah.
Oh.
And if you pre-order 3
You're not allowed to
copies,
eat while you're
you pre-order 3 copies, you get a side of fries.
Yeah,
All right, well,
sounds awesome. Yeah.
Wait, yeah.
And actually, if anyone wants to play right after this meeting,
Oh, good. It's here to play. It's here to be played.
Either one of these.
Okay, we've thrown out alphabet soup of all kinds of projects, different titles, things that are in the works. Does anybody have any questions about any games or projects you've heard about? Status check. Yes, please ask.
Are you going to get Tom Hanks to endorse your?
It's I could only wish, but it actually is. Other than the cheesy "I taunt you, silly Americans" scene and the exchange of deck gunfire, which kind of rarely happened because they're on the losing end of that. Other than those couple of things, I actually enjoyed the movie quite a bit, and the game actually sort of resembles that to a degree. So hopefully will be a selling point anyway. Bring some notoriety to it.
Any other questions about any projects? Else we're gonna have another lightning round. Yes, right there.
Leader.
Tank Leader.
I just walked in a little late, so I don't know if you talked about it, but that's a game I'm very interested in. And
I'll keep it short because the designer's not here, unfortunately. It's a
okay.
design team, but there were 3 designers for Tank Leader. John Hill started it off, and then there were 2 other designers. Both designers are active on the Tank Leader Eastern Front. We've added additional maps to it, so it's of course, additional scenarios. We're just in the process now getting the updated rules draft because we added a few tweaks to the rules. So that's a little bit about Tank Leader. So any other, yes, Michael?
Yeah, I'm curious about two, John.
Okay.
One, I guess, was a possibility you mentioned quite a while ago, and the other's been on pre-order list for a long time.
Okay.
Engage and Destroy.
That would be something Bill might be willing to mention first. So Bill, why don't you talk about Engage and Destroy before you destroy?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now we're getting to the town hall business meeting, but we're going to try to avoid that till tomorrow.
You need to hold up the old sign.
You asked that. Okay, no, that has just been something that has not gone forward very well. Okay, Brian Miller is actually finishing up Silent War IJN Deluxe. Then I know he's the developer involved in enemy action, or no, engagement, sorry. He got moved to other projects, okay, because Brian didn't have the time to work with him, okay? So he's back, he'll be back on that project beginning of the year. So there's still hope for that, okay? We left it out of the catalog, not because it's not gonna be published, but we left it out of the catalog because I couldn't give any type of even range date on that. It could happen soon, it could happen in 2023. So, and we had so much other stuff, we left it out, so people thought that that game was like gone. We weren't publishing it. But no, Brian Miller, as soon as he finishes up Silent War, he's going back to that, and the developer who we had for it is back on track with it.
That was a good answer. Thanks, Bill.
Great. And your other game, you had a second game, I believe?
Avalanche.
Avalanche was put on hold. I had it several years ago with a different person who was going to update it, and it was sort of going a direction. When it did move, didn't quite fit.
John, which Avalanche? GDW?
GDW Avalanche, yeah. So that one right now is officially on hold. No, it's not an active project at this time. Although, yes, Bill.
I have a question for you, John.
Okay. Oh, let me finish then. Or is it about Avalanche? Follow up on it?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
What is that game?
Avalanche is the Salerno landings of World War II. Salerno, by Frank Chadwick. Very somewhat unique system.
Thank you for the...
Sure.
Very pretty for its time.
Yeah. So, but I'm hoping that it can get done. I'm hoping the game will get done. But we'll see. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, that's a personal favorite of mine, actually, Avalanche. So, any other questions, or do we go? Yes, please.
Well, two.
Yes, two.
Randy, on Daniel Lombardi's game on the streets of Stalingrad, regimental level, I saw a podcast with him giving an interview and talking about it. Mm-hmm. And I think he was at the game convention in Arizona.
Maybe, yeah, probably, perhaps.
It's a great interest. I mean, he talked about the subject. Pretty cool. And, ammunition supply concerns for the, the German artillery. It's kind of cool. So you're involved in that project.
I am, and we're in the preliminary stages, putting together the design and artist team.
Yeah.
So it's just in the ground floor
Probably a
stages
Stuka Joe
right now.
interview. I'm thinking it was a
Oh
Stuka
yeah,
Joe
it might have been Stuka Joe, but it's a really, he talks at length about it.
It's going to be much more manageable, naturally,
that's what he
because of
said.
the scale.
And your other question?
And you talked about that Civil War Gettysburg game. Can you just repeat that? Because it went one ear and out the other, and I didn't hear it correctly.
Well, it's an old game from like 1977, 78. Does anyone know Sharpsburg by Command Perspectives or Road to Washington? So
I bought Roads to Washington here. At the
right here
table. From John.
John Teixeira.
Teixeira. Yeah.
So this it's a regimental level, and I actually learned about it reading in a Keisner ZOC, where he reviewed it and loved it, and it really took. It was like right after TSS, so it massively expanded on the concept of a Civil War regimental game, and it was one of the most fun games I've ever played back in the day. And he only made these 3 games. And Beat to Quarters is his least famous. And it was a wonderful fighting sail game.
Quarters was the name of it.
It's a fighting sail game.
Right.
It actually had like a little mini assembled in the game.
Yeah, I think I remember.
Yeah, wonderful game. But the point is that he had this, it's actually famous for having like 20 different types of fences. in the game. There are all kinds of different fences that he did in Sharpsburg and Road to Washington. But it's really a very interesting system, and it died when he died. And I wanted to give an homage and re-envision that, put it at Gettysburg, because we don't have enough Gettysburg games.
Well, yeah, we don't.
No, but, well, to be honest, I mean, people will buy it, and it's easy for me to research it. So, and I think it's a fun situation.
So what would be like how many maps do you think, or how many?
Well, it's Starkweather, so it's going to be like 4 maps,
20 maps.
100-yard X's. So it'll be a bigger game. But I mean, I'll do your standard scenarios for Gettysburg, your second day Long Street attack, and your Culp's Hill, and your Pickett's charge, and first day Willoughby Run, and all that stuff. Okay. I was thinking of calling it a study in command after the Connington book, which is pretty famous. But I think it's really going to be a cool thing. It's revisionist. I'm not going to make a lot of changes to the system. It's an I go, you go. But it does the same thing as like TSS, different kind of weapons, your muskets and your rifles and all that stuff. And I think certainly if you guys don't know it, you're in for a real treat. It's a really wonderful system, even 40 years old. I mean, I'm going to modify a little bit stuff, but I'm going to keep it fairly faithful to the system.
Okay. Did I hear you say Paddington's book on Gettysburg?
The which?
Paddington's book on Gettysburg?
Right, Study in Command. That's what I was thinking. I was going to call it.
Perspective, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great book.
Yeah.
All right. Yes, in the back.
Greg, you got the Sherman tank game. Are you going to do an M60 or a M1?
Yeah, that's.
We got to do some research on that.
That's actually already been requested, and I very likely, yes, possible. I mean that. I'm also being bothered to do bothered, but it's not a bother. It's a better term is pestered. People have been bugging me to do a modern submarine game too. So I mean, if I do the modern submarine game, I might as well do a modern tank game. But yeah, I won't have to do a whole lot of research for the M60 game, that's for sure.
Based on your background.
And
All right,
yeah,
we're gonna do another lightning round, dating round, so we get some matches going.
Good
here.
idea, sir. Good idea.
So we'll start on the other end. Steve, you're in the hot plate right now, but I think it's somewhat of an easier, maybe a little bit easier question. The first war game, board game you either owned or played. The first introduction to the hobby.
We were just talking about that.
Yeah.
I bought 3 at the same time. I bought Stalingrad, Afrika Korps, and Panzer Blitz.
Okay, remember those titles. We're doing mating, matching, right? Hold on. All right, Mike.
Tactics 2.
Tactics 2. Okay, we're a match.
Okay.
All right, well, I'll take you out later for
I'll
beer.
get you a drink later.
American Heritage Battle Cry.
Wow, Battle Cry. There we go.
Stalingrad.
Avalon Hill, Stalin. A lot of Avalon Hills.
Destruction of Army Group Center.
S&T. Was that an S&T?
That was an S&T issue 35.
All right.
Yeah, I answered an ad in the back of Boys Life magazine.
Yep.
A magazine with a game in it? Cool.
Sign me up.
And I was one issue after him in scrimmage.
Oh! Whoa! Wow, that's
Still a hobby.
And that was your. Okay, so everybody here, you heard the titles. Does that ring a bell? First game played, owned. Yeah, you have. What's your match? Well, no, first one though. First
one was Tactics 2, Gettysburg Hex, the Battle Cry, and one called Conflict, I think.
First one.
Parker Brothers Conflict.
Any match? Tactics 2. Oh, Tactics 2 is running away with it. Tactics 2 again. All right. Game store. So the game store wins, huh?
Come on, you guys played scrimmage. You just don't admit it.
And
But it wasn't my first game.
okay, who here? Okay, here's an interesting question. This is open-ended. This is for anybody. Bonus round question. Who started their first game the most complicated? That you think your first game was more complicated than anybody else here in the room? That your first game you think was more complicated than anybody else's
Yeah,
first game?
scrimmage was a pain in the ass.
Anybody want to take a shot at it?
My mom bought me 1914.
19. Okay, so he says 1914.
My second game.
No, not second game. First game has to be a first game. But we'll come to second game.
Avalon Hills, Jutland.
Okay, Jutland. So do we have a consensus here? Is Jutland? See, we're trying. It's sort of like that gift-giving thing where you can like take the gift away from the person. And does anybody have a game? Their first game more complicated than Jutland?
It was more complicated, but I started in squad leader.
Oh, that's. I think I go towards squad leader, right?
Jutland, sure.
All right.
Yeah, squad leader.
Is that it? Is that where we?
Scrimmage was pretty tough.
All right.
I mean, those linebackers had a
Tobruk, yeah, that was. So nobody. One person said he had Third Reich. I thought Third Reich was somewhat. has some pretty dense rolls to it.
Oh,
but
Third Reich's
I
a
don't think
tough
it's in the
one.
room.
That's the,
Did you get the
most
bookmaking
complicated.
expansion to Scrimmage?
Oh, no, we just threw it out. As soon as the next issue was Panzer Army Africa, and that was the last time
All right.
Scrimmage.
And you said something about your second game?
Second game, which influenced my the rest of my wargaming life. USN.
Oh,
US, ooh,
From
that's a
SBI,
tough,
and
that's
S&T.
very
Tough
tough.
game.
It was a monster game, even if it was just one map.
All right, so I think this will beat everybody. I had a 12-year-old attendee at Constant World Expo years ago, 12 years old. He was so excited, he came up to me, he bought A World at War. 12 years old. It's about, the box was half his size, half his height.
Wow.
So I'm gonna tip my hat to that kid. I think he beat all of us here. So if you're worried about the hobby aging, we've got a few years ago, he's probably 16, 17. There's also a big high school group that comes to Expo. So we got a lot of young kids in the hobby for sure. So I'll think of another lightning round question here in a second, but I want to open it back up to you guys. Then I'm going to ask a more serious question of you guys here in a second, not a lightning round. Any other questions before I go to a more serious question? Any other questions? No? Okay, more serious question. If you can summarize in 1 minute, what has been the toughest design challenge you've faced in a game that you've either already published, had published, or you're currently developing? The single hardest design challenge and how you tackled it. And anybody can jump in. I don't want to put you on the spot.
Yeah.
I know if you want to think about it. Okay, go ahead and start it
Yeah,
off.
when my co-designer and I were designing Amateur Star Arms, we did a lot of research on the War of 1812. And you had situations where you had American armies with thousands of troops that were defeated by 300 Canadian militia. And it's like, how do you do this? You know, whoa, how did that happen? You obviously are not going to have an odds-based issue, game here. But the key was leadership. Back in 1812, leadership was absolutely critical. And of course, there's a pretty broad, we used a 10-sided die so you can have a larger range of outcomes. And it was, and leadership was critical. And suddenly, and now that's the biggest complaint that I get from people from playing Amateur Star Arms. It says, I should have crushed them and I got defeated. That's ridiculous. How many battles do you want me to list where that actually happened? So,
right.
Yeah.
What kind of challenge do you call that? Is that a ratio challenge, a disparity of forces challenge? How would you summarize your
Making
design?
history work.
Making history work. Making history work. Right. Okay. You want to take a shot at that?
Sure.
Okay, go for
it. There's two. So it's one was just being confronted as a brand new designer with designing a deck of cards. Now, the game is Prelude to Revolution is divided into 3 eras, roughly historically. It's called Years of Turmoil, which is about 1906 to 1913. The Great War, which is 1914 to 16. Yes, I know it continues, but more importantly for this topic is the Collapse, which is 1970. So there's 3 parts. So it took a while for me to understand how to build a deck. Okay, I need a deck for this era, I need a deck for this era. So that was one challenge. But more importantly, unlike a lot of games, there's an event that's very likely to happen, which is the Tsar's abdication. You're not playing the Tsar, you're playing the government. You're not playing Lenin, you're playing the revolutionary. So the game goes along a certain way, but then when there's a track called the Tsar's Prestige, when that hits 0, he abdicates. And what do you do in that situation where the nature of the government changes? The nature, everything about the game, a lot of the events that were in the deck are no longer relevant because they have to do with the Tsar's behavior. So there was took a long time to work out what to do and how to have the game state change in such a way that did 2 important things. One, it would have been easy just to throw the whole thing up in the air and have it come down and be a new situation, but then all of your smart play and all of your clever maneuvering would have been discarded. So don't deprive the player of their smart play. But then again, everything has changed. How do you extend that? So we finally we came up with, I think, the right solution, but it took about 6-8 months of brain wrecking
that's a pretty prolonged
to get
period.
past it. Yeah.
All right, who wants to take a shot at that toughest challenge for you, Greg?
I'd say with that question for me, it was the Japanese fleet boats in Sensuokan. Japan at the start of World War II, they had a huge fleet, 17 different classes of submarine fleet boats. But they more efficient and better performing torpedoes and warheads than we had. So why did they underperform so terribly? Because by all, again, by just raw numbers, they should have been sinking everything. Well, it really boiled down to, I had to analyze, well, what was the problem? Well, Japan's high command viewed the submarine arm as basically an adjunct of the main fleet. They were to screen for the main fleet, to help reconnaissance, do all kinds of other things other than what a submarine force ought to do, or what ours or Germany's did, which was sink merchant shipping. That wasn't really their priority. So I had a hard time. Basically, what this ends up doing is hamstringing the player to a degree that he can't just run around sink crap like he does in the Hunters or Silent Victory and my other submarine games. So I had to reflect this somehow, and I finally came up with major historical events, and basically it's kind of the influence of the high command. You have to do missions. You can't just run around and go crazy on your own. You have to satisfy high command. And that might be screening in front of Midway, or reconnaissance off of the Philippines, or whatever it was, running supplies or evacuation, later on, crazy things. But that was kind of a tough nut to crack, but it finally, you just have to go back and analyze. If they have this great force and they have these great weapons and they have a lot of them in the most technologically advanced stuff in the world, aircraft disassembled in watertight hangars and midgets, so they have all this crazy great stuff, why did they perform so poorly? And once you figure out that it was a doctrinal issue, then you just have to figure out an easy way to fit the doctrine into the game and force the player to follow the doctrine.
Thanks, Greg. How about Steve? Do you have a design challenge you want to share?
Contact Now is tactical series that I've been working on since Fire Team came out by John Souther decades ago now. And so the goal was to show the evolution of modern tactics from 1936 to 2040, which is 104 years. To do a tactical series that shows the evolution of combat in 104 years was definitely challenging, because what happened in 1936 has no relevance today whatsoever. You can't even tell that they're the same issues or what. And then I was bound, set, and determined that there's never going to be a card in any war game I ever produced. And that worked until it didn't work anymore. And so, card driven, nope, that's out. Card assisted, well, what does that mean? 104 years of card assisted, what does that mean? And so, all of these systems that are in the series, and there's about 8 systems interlocked inside this, have all been tested out for 104 years. And let me tell you what, if you don't like gray hair, don't try that.
Well, that's not a small challenge right there. Randy,
I think researching accurate order of battle information was the greatest challenge. And I had a friend introduce me to the National Archives, had me obtain my National Archives research card. And when I literally had to don white gloves to look at original documents, I knew I needed to get some professional help. And I did. I networked, I sought it out, and I found people that were able to help me with good order of battle information.
That is awesome. That is awesome. And then Adam, how about you share one of your biggest design challenges you want to share?
Most of them will get me in a little bit of trouble if I talk about it.
Oh, we like it.
Yeah, all right, I'll give you one of those.
We like it.
So one of my first games that I ever put together was a game called Fire in the Sky. So I had this 14th century rice painting of a moon and like a tree or like a leaf that went off of it. And I wanted to get something like that for my box. So I gave Nico Scooby, who did the art, I gave him this picture, and I said, all right, I want you to copy the concept of this picture and use this image, that famous image that's on the box from, I think it's from a taffy carrier or something. So Nico was totally confused by this because it was, this 14th century rice painting. So I said, all right, so just make this. And we go over it for like a month, figuring out, he's taking stuff out, I'm making it more and more sparse to get it exactly where I want it. So I hand it into MMP, who made it. So, and I have everything perfectly organized. So Brian sends it back to me, he's got the box, And he made the name of the game and the MMP logo 6 times larger to cover up the entire negative space of it. And said, well, you got all this space, let's put this name there. And I freaked. So,
That was a fun
I'll
phone
give
call.
that one.
Fun phone conversation or something.
Yeah, I freaked. Oh, Ryan had his finger on the delete button on Consum World to delete my post when I saw that. So.
Nice. Well, I'm glad the
Can
forum.
I delete it?
Well, the forum never has any drama on it,
Yeah,
by the way,
so-
so we won't even mention that. All right, any questions before I do maybe one final lightning round here? Yeah.
I have a question you can present to each of the
Oh,
panelists.
all right.
Of all the designs each of you did, sometimes years later, is there any one of them where you'd say, I would not change a thing with this game, it's the best possible game it could be for whatever it
Can't
was?
improve it, yeah. Can't really, no big tweaks to the system or anything like that.
No, I couldn't say that about any of my games.
Yeah. No.
They're never done. Just
I can
handed
say it
around.
about every single game I've completed.
Oh, yeah, just Devil's Bowl, the one I made. I spent 3 years researching that game. It came out in 2007, right? In 2008 and 2010, 2 new books with brand new research came out.
Yeah.
I'm talking about like I did interviews for people that were there. I had the curator from the Oosterbeek Museum that helped me out. You never finish. They're never where you want them to be. And like I like played and rated my games on BGG. Some I gave 8s, some I gave 7s, some I gave 9s. I'd never give a 10.
Yeah, when I was asked,
yeah.
I was asked, well, why don't you do fantasy? And I'm like, okay, after 1990, it's all fantasy because they're not going to tell you what the armor is on the Russian T-80BV. They don't want you to know. And the CIA may well know, but they're going to lie to you. Oh, their armor's way bigger than ours. We need to upgrade our tanks. Our tanks don't necessarily need upgraded, but they want to spend the money. So after like 1990, if you're doing modern, it's all pretty much fantasy. Well, and it's like Alan said, as you come along, next year a new book will come out with new data in it that wipes out everything you had in the game already. So it's an ongoing process. If you're going to do anything that has anything to do with modern, it's all guesswork because they're not going to tell you the truth. So you just have to take best guess.
So let me just chip in, because obviously I haven't finished the design yet, but I will say this. Exactly the same experience. I've definitely got the baseline of the game, the baseline of the story and the cards, and then I read another book. I'm like, oh boy, I got to throw this card in there. And then I listened to Mike Duncan's excellent Revolutions podcast, Series 10, Russian Revolution. And I was like, oh, I got to add, I didn't get that right. I'm sure I could spend the next 5 years doing more research and tweaking the game. It'll never be done. So we just got to stop.
Gotta finish at some point or have some kind of a milestone.
Yeah, I mean,
It just has to be good enough. You get to a point where it's good enough.
Well, all right, I'll be the contrarian. Yeah, sure. You want to change errata if there's a typo or whatever, you missed something or one number on a chart got inverted or something, fine. But out of my 15 games, I would not change a thing with Night Fighter Ace. I was really happy with that design.
Oh, there we go.
It remains my favorite design to this day, and it's
The
about 10
gauntlet's been
years old.
thrown down, and we're selling it. No, I don't know.
I know. I just really, for a variety of reasons, I made it. There's a couple of design mechanisms I was really proud of, such as the seamless fuel consumption. You know, where you don't worry about consuming. The game consumes the fuel for you instead of you having to track it. So I was really happy with that. So the bottom line is, I researched that game for about 3 years, and yeah, there's a few boobles in the charts or whatever here and there, but I don't care. I like that game. I wouldn't change it.
Okay, lightning round. Here we go again. Some crazy shit now. If you were a staff person
Just
at
to be
if you were a
contrarian.
staff person at SPI, what would be the one war game they published you wish you had designed yourself and could do your own way? An SPI game. Which SPI title release would you?
Oh, let's go with North Africa campaign. Let's
The campaign for North Africa.
Let's just go right to
All
the
right,
top.
Steve. All right, so this is going to feed to Bill Thomas for ideas. It has to be different, of course, but it could be different. Okay, if there was an SPI game release and you want your name on it and do it your own way, what would that game be?
Lee Moves North.
Lee Moves North. And that's was that an S&T or was that only a flash?
Victory.
Yeah.
The original was an SPI. One of their first box games.
Yeah, was it? Okay.
Well, I was thinking of the Victory games.
Randy, what would be an SPI game you'd take a shot at?
Cobra. Patents
Oh,
break out
I
from
like
no-
that one.
no-
Oh, yeah, that'd be
and
nice.
very little needs to be done to that. That is a classic game.
I hear deluxe
I feel like there's some good game project ideas coming out of this.
Well, I sort of already did it, but Highway to the Reich and Atlantic Wall.
Okay, any preference between the two? If you only could pick one.
Well, I mean, I already did it. I did with Devil's Cauldron, Greatest Day, but
See, you already did that. See, it works. See where I'm going?
Yeah, you
Mad
already did it.
scientist here?
No question, war in Europe.
War in Europe, I think.
I already have book tons of homemade, changes in errata, Yeah, well, I do war in Europe, without question.
I'm assuming you mean the biggest failure in your eyes by SPI that you would make better.
No. That's
it's
going
just
deeper.
your favorite.
There's just one game you would like attached to you that I wish I had a shot at. If I was at SPI, could time travel, and then again pick me to do a
I
game.
still pick those two.
Yeah, so I'd go the other way. The game that was fantastic game, it would have tweaked it a little bit, made a few changes. Winter War.
Oh, one of my favorites, Winter War.
Winter War.
I love that. Okay, what's the one game, I'll start with you, lightning round, your last one. What's the one game you haven't played yet that you hope to play one day before we all pass on?
Oh my
Can't play
God,
games
so
anymore?
many.
Pick one. What's the one you've been itching that one day, I hope I can play this one day when I retire.
Europa Universalis.
Oh, that's an easy game.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the one game you got to play.
No, I don't think I ever will.
You own the game.
Not anymore.
Oh,
I
no.
gave up on it.
Oh no. Okay. All right. Well, is there any one game, Greg, you haven't had a chance to really play that you'd like to?
His Korea game.
His
I have
Korea
it.
game. OSS Korea, right? Okay. Adam, any game out there you haven't had a
The
chance?
new edition of Lipotide Moskva.
From Marshall. The Marshall.
Yeah, the Marshall.
Yep.
Clash of Arms one or
The which?
the Clash of
No.
Arms?
Randy,
one's the Marshall.
what game have you not had a chance to play yet that you want to take a stab at?
Eric Goldberg's Curse.
Oh, I like that one. I haven't played that either. That's a good one. Mike, any game out there?
Yeah, Diffraction Entertainment.
Oh.
Barbarossa.
Whoa, yeah. You know about Diffraction Entertainment? It's a big ass
8x10.
mother, right?
It's the 8x10 map.
Yeah, but sort of the Europe went away with our legal thing.
miles by 10 miles. That's the
Yeah, the Europa, your legal thing, sort of. Yeah. Steve, any particular game out there?
Well, after Greg's comment, I guess it's gonna have to be Night Fighter Ace, huh?
Oh, nice. We have a set. Okay, 80 game portion. Any match?
Hey, if you don't die in the next 12 hours, I can make that happen.
There we go.
All right. Any matches with the SPI question, like the SPI games? If I was a designer at SPI, time travel, like anybody have a match, Winter War, any of those titles at all? Emus Nor, any of those?
War in Europe.
War in Europe. Who said War in Europe?
Me.
War in Europe.
Totally do.
All right, you guys have to hook up and talk later. Put a compass logo.
That's doing 20. Cobra was.
Cobra, that's awesome. I think that's an awesome. That was an awesome game, and it's done different versions. Like the Decision's done different things with it, and I can't keep track.
I play Europa Universalis on Paradox Plaza, but it's the computer game.
Oh, right,
That's
yeah.
that should
Wow,
be
very,
different.
very
I mean, at least you
different.
can play it. Michael,
Winter War was my very first.
Winter War was your first
That was
game.
my first game I ever learned.
That's a great
Yeah.
entry. Oh wow, that's a great entry point.
Yeah.
Any matches on the games they wish to play next? I know you talked about Europa Universe.
Oh, yeah.
New version will be out next year.
Yeah, I know you were going to run it.
I didn't know if they were
When it gets here, it'll be at the con.
Okay.
Okay?
Awesome.
We'll do a scenario that's
Yes.
not all day.
Diffraction.
Diffraction, yeah.
Besides its cost, and I never get around to doing
Yeah.
it, but I wish I would be able to get around
There's
to it.
Mare Nostrum, and there's all these other, and Pacific, right?
String
The
them all
whole-
together.
Could fill up the whole room on the floor.
That's what I like to do.
All right, guys, I don't know what time is it? Time check here. I think I'm going to open up to you to make it any final burning questions. We're about at the hour. Thanks for your patience. Final questions for the designers here?
Like you mentioned in your game, Prelude to Revolution, I think,
Yeah.
about events. You're doing a card-driven game, and what happens when the events are no longer relevant. I had a situation with Paths of Glory recently, where the Turks had fallen, and you get these cards. It didn't make any sense anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
So I didn't quite get how do you adapt to that?
So here's what we came down to. Well, what happens in historically is Tsar resigns, the Duma, which is sort of the parliament, eventually forms a provisional government that sits in place and tries to run the empire until Lenin and the Bolsheviks stage a coup d'etat in October. So there's that period of time we're dealing with because the last turn is October. So what we did, there are several cards which are specific that need to come out of the deck, so we mark them, put a little blue triangle in the corner. And then when the Tsar abdicates, one of the game mechanics is you pull out all those, and there's another special provisional government deck with specific events that are specific to the new circumstance that gets shuffled in.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it worked real well.
Yeah, Another interesting mechanic to deal with that, I think, is if the designer thinks ahead, and if event A will render type B cards obsolete or useless, if you could put in a mechanic to cycle cards for free. So in other words, you have 5 cards in your hand, you're like, oh, this one's useless. If during the start of your turn, you're allowed to ditch it and draw a new card.
Are there also cases?
And that, you don't even have to, worry about reshuffling or digging them out or whatever.
Are there-
You just cycle them.
Are there also cases with games when you have that event attached to a card and it's not maybe possible anymore, but there's instead some kind of ops point expenditure approach you can go, I'll just spend ops points to activate. Like as an easy out,
too.
Right?
And the third option, of course, is if you know it's going to become useless, is to, or the star method to make the card never come back again, kind of thing. If you know it's going to be used once, but in the future it's going to be useless, kind of thing. So there's ways to deal with it, I guess. Obviously,
Well, this game right here has a mechanic where if you choose to, you can discard the card and get a special bonus.
The hard part of the system is
like cycling.
Yeah.
No discard in your system.
It's key to the system that you're stuck with the hand you have.
Brutal.
You can have cards to your opponent, when you play it's like in Twilight. If you play your opponent's card, you get the ops points, but they get the event. But you're stuck with that. So there is no discard mechanic. So I would love to have it. But
it depends on the design. I mean, obviously, not the shoe doesn't fit all feet.
Yeah, exactly. Excellent. Great question. Any final questions? Otherwise, we're on the hour. And okay, great. So tomorrow? Oh yeah, go ahead, Milton. Yeah.
Is the hex game format for these games, is that going to last, or is it going to get replaced by something else?
Open to anybody here. Will it go away from hexagons at some point?
I don't do hexes anymore. Area movement.
Area movement? For Kevin's an area movement guy only. That's it. There you go. No hexes.
I actually had a game. I was actually the original iteration of the Doomsday Project. This was many years ago, like 10 years ago. And originally I wanted to have areas. So I posted, well, it'll be an area game. I hadn't started it really, it was just concept. And a small riot occurred that it wasn't hexes. I don't think hexes are going anywhere.
Yeah, not for me, not in a tactical setting. The area movement works better for the larger scale. And so for tactical that I'm in, the hexes are never going to go away.
Yeah, I think.
Well,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mainly do areas in my games that require that, and I'm not a hex guy, but on a personal level, I love hexes. I've always been a hex guy, but so I think it's just become just like I don't think cards are ever going to go away. Once the card-driven mechanic and the card-driven games got popular a decade ago or whenever it was, it's just another way to skin the. It's just another tool in the toolkit. So I think as popular as they are, cards is 30 years old. Okay, whatever.
Oh man.
The point being, it's just an alternate. Area. I think areas aren't going anywhere because they're simpler and easy to comprehend, and some people really like it because it allows them the layer of simplicity of the game, and yet you still have playability. So I don't think areas are going anywhere, but we love hexes, and the hexes have their purposes too. So there are two different tools in the toolkit, depending on the topic and the game and the design. So I don't think that one's going to supplant the other. We'll always have hexes, like they said. I agree with that. I just, but areas have their place also.
Does anyone remember when 1812 came out from SPI?
SPI, the area game, yeah.
Who scoffed at areas? Was like, areas? Like, I think, everybody's going to say, but I think we as gamers have matured, not just gotten gray and older, but we've matured in our views. So now point to point, area, hex, other things have become.
Hopefully diplomacy helps.
Also, the underlying design mojo with this stuff. No. It used to be very simple. Areas are just areas now.
Yeah.
People are like building.
Yeah, actually, it was 38.
Detailed. Question up front here. Yeah.
Yeah. It was one of those 6.
Maybe it was 40.
Yeah. It was one of the 6 I got with that subscription.
At home, because what I enjoy about I couldn't make board games is the order of battle. And as an amateur, I call myself an amateur historian, is that I find it really fascinating. I spend a lot of time looking at that, before I even break down the counters, and referring to my history books, which I have a lot of them, And, you know, I just find that fascinating because a lot of times in history books, they don't dwell into that too much. And with the war games, I find that they do, and or at least the good ones do, and they're very accurate, whether it be in the Civil War, World War II, ancient, and I just find that very fascinating. And to me, you know, I get a lot out of that, and I just wanted to parrot, you know.
That's a big deal.
Yeah,
And I agree. I think the good starting point for a great design is a well-researched order of battle, order of appearance, and cartography. And that can be noted in the references in the designer's book and in the designer's notes. So.
But it's also different people too. Like I have a guy who I work with with OBs. I just actually picked him up about a year ago. So his first big game's Test of Fate. He loves OBs. He lives for it. I think he dreams about it. But for me, it's like pulling teeth. You know, my stuff's in the design stuff. I like thinking of new concepts and all that. And he lives for it. So it's also a lot about who you are and what drives you to do this. So he's like you know, or someone like Carl Fung. These guys love OBs.
Thank God for Carl.
You know, and
we're
like you,
thankful they
and
exist.
you should hook up with someone and get your work in there, because for me, having this guy is like a godsend. You know, I just ask him, you know, find me, like I'm making a game on Berlin where the communist player has to hunt down the political undesirables. He's going to track them all down for me. He's going to get me names of everybody, what they did, and he loves doing it.
That's cool.
So for me, it's
forensics.
But it's more than just orders of battle. I mean, you have to completely immerse yourself into the time. And I mean, every one of my games has a bibliography in the back of this, you know, a whole bunch of books that I've read. Completely immerse myself, and that's where the design comes out.
How common is it that you have order of battles where they get refuted? Like, no, this was definitely wrong. Like in this game, and this is how it should have been, or this shouldn't be there at all. Do you get any like points of refusion?
We just had strength points, amethyst arms, and yeah, people are constantly coming to me.
Too many potatoes.
Yeah, they're coming to me with Maori, you know, wrong. No, I really haven't had specific.
Sometimes I hear from the Eastern Front, oh, that game was done 30 years ago. This was all wrong. These formations should have been, or on D-Day, even D-Day games. Oh no, that formation wasn't really there. It was over here.
Back to Adam's point, though, also new research comes out all the time. You find out you were as right as you could be at the moment, but you're wrong.
Well, I was just thinking, you know, with the strength, the defense, or whatever, however they rate them, it's just fascinating to me, especially in the context of history. And, you know, it makes you think, you know, and it does take a lot of research, and I do appreciate that. To me, you know, it gives you, you know, just take a ancient thing, you know, you find, you know, whether it's, you know, the Romans or whatever, and you look at it and you find out who the veterans were and, you know, who, you know, and so forth. To me, it's fascinating. It just adds to the context of, you know, the historical.
Here, I'll give you a funny research story, all right? So I have this game, Devil's Cauldron, right? And I designed scenarios for it. So I had this initial scenario, and then I read a book, and it changed the perspective of it, so I rearranged it all and did it the way it's supposed to be. And then I got guys coming on going, no, it's all wrong. This isn't what happened. And I asked what his source was, and his source was the original wrong scenario.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, you also got to be careful about what your source is.
Right. I'll tell you though, if you have a specific area that you like or that you're very good at, I did 100 scenarios for an old computer game called Combat Mission, and we did. I did a series on the heroes. So if they had won the Knight's Cross, I would do a scenario about this guy did the Knight's Cross. If they did the Medal of Honor, I would do a scenario on that. And we would go in and we would actually pull the terrain up and then transfer from Google Earth into the computer game. So I had this guy, it was in Russia, north of Berlin, or north of Moscow in 1941 when they're pushing up by Klin. And I'm like, okay. He goes, it's right here. So I pull Google Earth up, there's nothing there. I'm like, no, there's no village here. He goes, are you looking in the right place? He said, it's right here, you know, at these coordinates. And I'm like, I'm looking at those coordinates. I'm telling you, there's nothing there. He goes, zoom in. and you could see where the streets of the village were. That village burned to the ground, and he found it. So I'm telling you, boys, it can be done.
There's another side to this, which I wonder if people would agree. There's a real bias can creep in. A lot of people who play OCS games, like World War II East Front, especially East Front, will say, yeah, somebody really likes those Germans and really thinks an awful lot of the German army because it's sort of like the mega panzers. It's sort of, it's almost like there's an unstoppable overrunning German army that just doesn't matter. And I think that has a lot of impact on the design. You have to watch that bias that creeps in and gets expressed through the design.
I have a quick question for the designers here.
Sure.
Have you ever had a gamer argue with you on a rule you wrote that you were wrong?
Oh,
Yes.
when has that not happened, Ellen?
I'm saying you wrote the rule.
Yeah, right,
You're
I
telling
know.
them what the rule is, and they're arguing with you that you're wrong.
I had a guy the other day wanted to know why, when I have combat the closer they come, why doesn't the firepower increase? And I'm like, because that's not what it shows. Until you're within hand grenade range, it doesn't really increase. And he's like, so all these other games are wrong and you're right. Wait a minute.
No, I'm not talking about arguing your design.
No, I know, but my rule. Yeah.
You do A first, then B, and it goes, no,
Yeah,
it's
right.
B, then A.
Yeah, right.
No. You do A, then B.
Yeah.
There you go. All right, I'm going to throw out a question. We're going to close here, but again, a reminder tomorrow, 5:30, we'll have pizza right there, and then we'll start the campus update at 6. Thank you so much, guys, for being here. Thank you all for being here. Enjoy the rest of your evening. See you tomorrow at 5:30.